Hey guys, Joe here, and here we are to talk to you about the Link matchup analysis / guide, who is good and bad versus. Now in this video I'm going to be talking about who Link is very good versus, who's bad versus, some pros and some cons of Link, mainly just talking about his analysis, really what characters he does well versus and what characters he doesn't do quite as well versus, some of his pros and some of his cons. With all that said, let's get this started. First, let's start off by talking about the pros of Link, and he has quite a bit of pros about him. He's a very good character in my opinion, but let's get this started. First off, he has some combos. Now, he isn't the most combo-oriented character in the game, but with his side B and his down B, his neutral B, all these moves added up, he can really combo quite a bit. His projectiles do combo into other moves, his Nair is a pretty good combo tool, and his forward air can sometimes combo also. Also, his down tilt can be used for comboing. He does have a decent amount of combos, even though he isn't really a combo type of character. Also, he does have a ton of ranged moves. Now, this is really awesome because, for example, he's a side B, which does just, hit the opponent far away. He can use a neutral B, he can use his down B, and he can just keep the opponent away. He can really camp, so I really think that's strong. Next, he can gimp pretty well. Now, this is just, in my opinion, with his bombs, with his side B, and with his down air mainly, and his back air, I feel like these moves can gimp, and this is just what I personally think. I see a lot of Links actually doing a bit of gimps. Maybe he's not the best at going for far-reaching games, but against people that really have to recover next to the stage, I feel like he does well against those guys. Next, I'd say that he does have very strong smashes, and this gives him a good matchup versus quite a bit of people that really can't kill early. Really strong smashes just let him kill the opponent, especially if they're lightweight, so there's that. Next, he does have okay frame data. Now, a lot of the characters in the game, they either have great or terrible frame data. I'd say his is just pretty okay. It's kind of middle of the road. He does have some very fast moves, but also some very slow moves, but a lot of his slow moves do get rewarded, but at the same time, a lot of his fast moves just aren't quite as strong as other people's fast moves. I don't know, he just has a little middle of the road frame data that does have decent speed, but not way too much power in all his attacks. Next, he does have, of course, the middleweight class, and he is on the heavier side of the middleweight, so he won't die for quite a while, so that's, of course, really nice, and it lets him just live against people that really don't have way too many kill moves once again. Okay, the next thing is that he can go on offense or defense. Now, this is one of the things I really love about Link. Of course, we do see a lot of Links going defense because, defense is a very easy way to play Link, but at the same time, you can go offense pretty easily. If you shoot out an arrow, get your down B ready, throw it towards the opponent, and then jump in, then you could either just go for a grab, for a jab, for a down tilt, for a forward air, any of those different moves. You can actually go on offense pretty well. Now, this doesn't work for all the characters in the game, and versus people with very strong frame data, you can't really go on offense way too much, but against most of the cast, you actually can do it pretty well, so I really think that's kind of cool. Next thing is that he can camp, so that's really nice. He can just stay away, throw his stuff, and that really gives him a good matchup for a lot of the people. Also, he does beat a lot of the slow characters in the game. They really can't do much against him. He can just kind of spam against them. He has these really big hitboxes, so he does just beat the slower people in the game. And finally, his tilts do have, of course, that combo power, and most of them do kill. His forward tilt can kill, down tilt, and up tilt. Pretty much all of his tilts can kill, so I feel like that is some really nice stuff that Link does have under his belt. Okay, so now that we've gone over some of his pros, let's talk about some of his cons. The first one is that he is very easy to combo. Of course, he's a middleweight, but he's also very tall, and of course, he's heavier of middleweight, so it's really easy to combo, and he doesn't really have a get-off move. You can try to use Nair, but most of the time, that won't do way too much. He can also get out-camped very easily. A person like Villager can just kind of use the neutral B, use a side B, and just forward airs, back airs. He can just out-camp him. Link does have some really fast moves, but his range moves aren't the fastest, so he can be out-camped. Also, he does have that tether grab, which in some cases can be good, but overall, it does just make so if you whiff one grab, you're in really big trouble, and the opponent can punish you way too well. Also, the grab doesn't really combo way too well, so even if you do get the grab, it won't really do way too much for you, won't really give you that big advantage, so grabbing isn't one of your best strengths. After that, he also has lots of lag after whiffed smashes. If you whiff one of your smashes, you're going to be waiting a long time, and that does, of course, let the opponent punish you. He also has a bad recovery. Well, it's not really way too bad, but it is very punishable. Somebody like a Captain Falcon can go for a down air. A lot of people in the game can just back air or forward air you off the cliff. There's really not way too much you can actually do. You just kind of have to hope that you don't die, and that's really not the best way to use a recovery. Also, it's really just not way too safe. Other than that, he also can be blocked by shield really easily. Of course, all of his moves don't come out way too fast, so you can block a lot of them by shield. And also, since his grab isn't way too good, you can just block everything because he can't really grab way too often just because his grab isn't too fast. And if he does go for that grab a lot, you can just kind of spot dodge the grab and then attack him, so that is a very bad thing about him. Next, a lot of his combos are very unreliable. He has a ton of cool combos that are really weird to get used to, but a lot of them are a little bit unreliable. They don't work all the time, so you're going to have to put some effort into trying to find these combos, and they only work a certain percent, so it is very hard to find these combos with Link. And finally, I'd say his aerial hitboxes aren't really way too big. Now, his ground hitboxes are pretty huge, but his aerial hitboxes are either really narrow or just really short overall, so it can be really hard to actually outspace people in the air, even though you do have that great spacing on the ground. With all that said, let's talk about who he has an advantage versus, a disadvantage versus, and who he's equal to. Now, I did decide to change the wording to advantage because earlier I kind of made it sound like you automatically win or you automatically lose this matchup, but I want to tell it more about you just do very well versus characters, but still, you can lose, and you don't always have the most advantage, just a slight advantage. In some cases, though, it can be a very big advantage. But with all that said, let's go over some of the things that really gives him a big advantage. Of course, on the screen, you can see the characters that I think he has an advantage over. First off, very sluggish characters. Anybody that's slow, you can kind of just outcamp, use your really strong, really far-range smashes, and your very far-range tilts, and even your jab, and they really can't do way too much. You just kind of win against sluggish characters, which is really cool. Also, he does very good against big characters, because he can actually get his combos very often. They're a lot more reliable on big characters, and most of the time they are slow. Also, he does very well versus defensive characters. Now, this has to be defensive characters that don't have more spam than him. If they don't have more random stuff to throw out, then you can usually do pretty well against them because you have a lot better defense game than most of the characters in the game. After that, he also does well versus characters with very poor frame data. Now, of course, Link doesn't have the best frame data, but it is actually pretty decent on certain moves, like his jab. So if you do go for that pretty often, you can actually stop the opponent, and they really can't do way too much against you just because you have some decent frame data. Next, I'd say is good versus people that are very projectile heavy, but they don't have really fast projectiles. I'd say somebody like Samus, he'd do very well versus, first off, he can block all of their attacks, and also he can kind of just shield all of their stuff and play a lot more defensively than they can, and you do force the opponent to approach, which of course gives you that big advantage. Along with that, he also beats people with no projectiles at all because he can just throw out those projectiles and they really can't do way too much. Of course, they can try to shield them all, but it's really hard to get out of that pressure and just get out of that gate and get right into Link. Finally, I'd say that he's really good against people that are bad at approaching just because they can't really get in versus him. And overall, you just kind of win when the opponent can't approach. And after that, I'd also say that he does do well versus people that are non-combo based characters. Because a lot of times, combo based characters, you know, they can give you like 0 to 60 and then you can't do way too much. But if you are versus a non-combo based character, essentially they'll hit you once, you can hit them 3 times. They'll hit you once, you hit them 3 times, and you go on from there. Now that we've talked about who he has an advantage versus, let's talk about who he has a disadvantage versus and what type of characters those are. Of course, again, you can see that all on the screen. So the first type of character I feel like he really does have a disadvantage versus are the people with great approaching tools, essentially good rushdown characters with really fast attacks and really fast grabs. If they can just run up, grab you, and attack you, you really can't do way too much of Link. Of course, you can try to throw out all your projectiles, you can try to keep them out, but a lot of times they can't just shield all these and get in. All you really have to save you is your jab or maybe a neutral air, and after that, you just kind of doomed. So it does give you a really bad matchup against some of those guys. Next, anybody with a good command grab, that can really just get you out of nowhere. Because a lot of the times with Link, you will just want to throw out your side B, down B, neutral B, and maybe go for a jab or something like that, and then hold the shield button. But if they do it with a command grab, they can just grab you out of nowhere, and then you are in a bit of trouble. The next one is characters with a very good air game / really good juggle game. Of course, your air game is okay, but you really don't have way too much range. So if somebody has more range than you in the air, they can beat you a lot in that aspect. And at the same time, if somebody can juggle you really easily in the air, you don't really have any way to get down. Of course, you can try to go for a down air, but a lot of times they can just air dodge past that and then hit you with their own down air, or they can just move to the right a little bit and then hit you with a move. There's really not way too much you can do if the opponent is juggling you, so that does give you some big problem. Another thing is just, one, you're fighting a character with good overall frame data. Of course, your frame data is okay, but you really don't have any jank that really gives you that huge advantage against any other character. You don't have a Marth tip or anything like that, so you don't really have all that super good overall jank that you can beat somebody with good frame data. If they have good frame data, a lot of the times you just can't beat them just because their moves come out a little bit faster than yours and it makes it very hard. Other thing after that is you can do really bad versus characters that do not have a tether. Now the reason for this is of course because your tether is just a really big disadvantage it makes, so it's really hard to grab, and if you do miss that grab, then you'll be in a lot of trouble. So if you're fighting somebody without a tether grab, I feel like it can be pretty hard. Next person after that is just people that can really out-spam him. If anybody can out-spam Link, then there's not much he can really do. He doesn't have the best approach in the game, and if you're out-spamming him, you just have to hold shield and hope for the best. Of course, you can't really grab them, so it can be really hard when people are trying to out-spam you. After that, I'd say people with a great punish game, essentially because most of your moves that are kill moves take a little bit of time to come out, and if you do miss that kill move, if you whiff it in any way, shape, or form, you're essentially going to get punished with a very strong move, and if they have a really early killing move, then you're done. Finally, I'd say that he doesn't do way too well against short characters, mainly for the fact that a lot of the short characters can actually duck underneath some of his projectiles, and that gives him a hard time just trying to camp them. Other than that, though, he doesn't have way too hard against. Finally, I'd say he does have a pretty equal ground matchup with a large portion of the cast. He has some pretty good frame data. He isn't the best at a lot of stuff, but he also at the same time isn't the worst at a lot of stuff. He does struggle a lot of the time versus these very high tiers, but against anybody other than that, he can most of the time do great. Finally, does he need a secondary? With Link, I'd say you don't really need a secondary. He does fine as himself, very strong pick, and I'd say even if you play just with him, it's okay. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is that in some of these videos, you may see some of my lists, both the advantage and the disadvantage. You might see them contradict a little bit. And the main fact is this, is that I learn the matchups a little bit better every single video. So I'd say if you want to know the most accurate matchups, try to look at the newest videos. At the same time, I feel like a lot of the older videos will have a majority of the matchups correct, but the newer ones will just have a little bit better of the matchups correct. That's because I put a lot of the time into looking at these characters' matchups, see against who they're really good versus and who they're really bad versus. So I really have a little bit more time with these new matchups to kind of see exactly how it works out. But at the same time, I still do try to go for my hardest, try to do my best on those earlier videos of where I just try to place characters. But of course, I'm not perfect, and I will change my decision over time. I will just change my opinion. With all that said, thank you guys for watching. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did enjoy the video, make sure to press a like if you want to see more like it. Thank you guys for watching, though, and I'll see you all next time.